Welcome to the Excel Pod. Welcome to the UNTIED Podcast, where we unravel the knots of life with faith, wisdom, and encouragement, because together we're here to untie from tradition and embrace truth through powerful Bible teaching. My name is Garrett and I'm one of the hosts of this show, and as always, I'm here with Corey Sawyers, and we are going through the Sermon on the Mount, and we have learned so much, we've thought about so much, and we're glad that you have joined us today for another episode of the Untied Podcast. We do hope that you are doing well in your own walk, in your own life, and we pray that all the things that we discussed in the past and present and future will all be a great blessing to you as you strive to grow in your knowledge of God's Word. And this season we have been going through the Sermon on the Mount, and talking about a lot of good stuff. And so we're going to do a recap here shortly, get into our study, which our topic today is going to be fasting. And we are hopefully going to be able to get into money and get through both of these, but we'll see where the conversation goes. As always, we appreciate you joining us today for this episode, and hope that you will like, share, follow, and subscribe, not only to this podcast, but also to all of those on the Excel Pod network. We've got a lot of cool stuff going on there. I'm sure we'll share some of that. But just anxious to get into this conversation after taking a week off, because we had some cool stuff I'm sure we'll talk about that was going on last week. So anyway, without further ado, Corey, man, what's been cooking?
Well, we just got through celebrating Independence Day, which, by the way, it's a little bit of a, what's the word I'm looking for? A little barb in my side, thorn in my side. I don't know why we call it the 4th of July. Are we embarrassed to call it Independence Day? Like, no one says, hey, what are you doing the 25th of December? No one says that. I don't know why we call it the 4th of July. I don't know why we call it the 4th of July. That it being the 4th of July makes it no more special than the 5th of July or the 12th of July or the 22nd of March or whatever. Anyway, Independence Day, number 250 for America. We decided to smoke some meat and make some homemade ice cream. So we smoked some ribs. There they are, just getting put on the smoker first thing that morning. And I always, of course, pull the membrane off the back, and then I let them sit in the refrigerator I got one of those large tote things, that you can put meat in or whatever with a lid on it. Mm-hmm. Let it kind of, the outside of it dry up just a little bit so that it can get some good caramelization on it when it's smoking. And anyway, put a little rub on it, a little sweet preacher, and we do the 3-2-1 method, where you smoke them for 3 hours and then wrap them in foil for 2 hours. And then that last hour, they're already up to 205, so they're at done temperature. But we paint some barbecue sauce on it and let that kind of set for about an hour and get a little bit more smoke on that. And then the problem that we had with these was I messed them up. The bones kept coming out of the meat, and like you'd pick one up, and I don't know what I did wrong. But I mean, I tried to tell them you didn't have to eat them. Just let me,
Just
but anyway,
ruined.
Did that, and we smoked a stick of bologna and smoked a little Boston butt. There's the bologna, and there's the ribs when they were done. Live action shot there. after I cut them all up. There's
There's
me
the
and
whole
my
crew.
yeah, on the left side of the screen, and the yellow and the black is my mother and father-in-law, and on the right side of the screen is my mama and daddy, and then our youngest son Gannon, and Melody's taking the picture, and you can see where my focus is at. Everybody else is looking up, and I'm looking down at my plate. So anyway, had some garden tomatoes with it, and some I don't know if y'all make the cucumber, onion, tomatoes in vinegar kind of deal. Had that, and some baked beans and taters, and grilled some corn, and then cream styled it, and it was just all there. And then we made two. I don't have a picture of that, but we had 2 gallons of homemade ice cream. We made some chocolate peanut butter, and then banana homemade ice cream. And anyway, so it's a good thing we're talking about fasting today, because we practiced gluttony the other day. So
That's right. But before we do that, why don't we just take a poll here? We were talking about this before we got on and recorded. As this, our podcast always tend to be a few hours long. The recording is not, but the conversation as a whole always is, which is probably the funnest thing about this. But anyway, we were talking about favorite homemade ice cream. And what is your favorite homemade ice cream? And so you said that your one of your favorites is banana homemade ice cream. And part of that's growing up and all that stuff. And of course, what was the other one? Peanut butter and chocolate?
yeah, that's Melody's favorite.
Yeah, Melody's favorite.
No one around here made every now and again you see somebody make chocolate, but Melody loves Reese's peanut butter cups, so she asked if I could make some chocolate peanut butter, and I said, well, I can certainly give it a try. And it took us a few variations to figure out the recipe, but
yeah,
we finally got it.
Well, those are yours. And then I was saying that growing up, banana nut was a big one. Another big one that I remember several people making peanut butter or Butterfinger. Those were always there. But peach homemade ice cream is always a really big one as far as homemade. So for you guys and girls listening out there, what is your favorite homemade ice cream? I'm interested to see what that looks like and what kind of cool flavors that people will come up with. So we have a lot of strawberry on our Facebook page, and you guys put that on there. I'd love to see what those comments are. YouTube channel, whatever,
or wherever.
Yeah. So I would be interested to see what that is.
Well, there's a lot of strawberry and peach made around here too. Yeah. And my daddy, he usually makes strawberry. He'll also make blackberry. Which is really good. And we're at that time of year for blackberries and blueberries around here. I've had some blueberry homemade ice cream. It was good.
Yeah. Of course, chocolate's always, I don't know that I would say that that was always a favorite. Maybe it was, but I've never been a big chocolate ice cream person. But
and I think part of it too is you can buy chocolate ice cream at the store. Yeah, right. Everywhere you go, you can get chocolate ice cream, which, like we talked about a while ago, Mama and Papa making banana ice cream all the time is one of the reasons I grew up loving banana, but also just because you can't go buy banana ice cream. So, and we didn't make banana nut. So, I'm enough of a nut. We didn't have to put a nut in the banana ice cream. We just stick with the bananas. So, but there's nothing like homemade ice cream.
Yeah. It's good. Now, if you store-bought ice cream, different. Butter pecan, definitely a favorite.
Butter pecan.
Or bluebell strawberry, specifically, is one of my favorites. And I love peppermint. Not everybody likes peppermint, but I am a big peppermint guy. And one of the reasons that I really liked it was because nobody else really did. And then my boys got a taste of it, and now I can't keep it in the house. So I had to find another one that nobody would eat so that I could have my own ice cream. But then everything I bring in, they seem to like. So,
well, my daughter-in-law, Bailey, she her favorite is cinnamon ice cream. And
really?
So I last year on her birthday, I made some cinnamon ice cream for her. and it was pretty good. I love cinnamon rolls, and I love cinnamon, so it was
Cinnamon
really
rolls, yeah. I don't know that I've ever heard of anybody doing cinnamon ice cream.
I
Sounds
hadn't
good.
until she
cinnamon
said
butter.
it. Her mama, her mama always made it for her birthday, and you have to get some vanilla extract. You get some cinnamon extract that you put in there, and it's good. Now we've also had like you said, butter pecan and some of that store-bought. A couple of years ago, Bluebell had a blackberry cobbler ice cream, and it was blackberry, I think blackberry preserves is what Daddy makes his with fresh picked blackberries, but I think it was like blackberry preserves, and then they had crumbled up pieces of pie crust in there. Yeah. And it was a special for that summer. They had a banana pudding ice cream a couple years ago that had the vanilla wafers and banana.
Right.
All in it, but I've never seen it since. But but I love homemade ice cream.
It's good.
I have to watch myself, or I eat way too much of it. I'm ashamed to say.
Well, I didn't do any cooking. We went and ate hamburgers at some friend's house, which were pretty good. So. Did not have to do that. However, I have been cooking several things. Did some Philly cheesesteaks the other day on my Blackstone. And what else have I cooked? I cooked something else the other day. Fajitas. So, been doing a few things. But anyway, those ribs look pretty good. So now I'm in the mood to cook some ribs. Favorite food group, ribs. Number 2, brisket. Number 3, homemade ice cream. So tell us what your favorite is, and we will do something with it. I don't know. We just want to know.
Yeah. The winner gets to make us a gallon and bring to... No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Oh, man. Well, there is... we were gone. We didn't record last week, Corey. So there's a lot going on, of course, in every summer, but... we already had a week that we couldn't record because you were in preacher training camp. Next week, I'll be in preacher training camp. And so I don't know if we'll be able to record then. However, this week we were getting, last week, I guess, we were getting all of our manuscripts in for this next Excel Still More Bible workshop book over Ephesians. And so all of those are now officially turned in. Which is a huge weight that is always off of our shoulders. But really looking forward to that study. Right now we're finalizing the schedule, getting all of the speakers lined up, all that kind of good stuff to get everything going. Of course, you can already book your hotel rooms on the website if you just go to excelstillmore.net. And you can head over to the workshop page, go down to the link where the hotel is, and you can go ahead and book your rooms. We actually got better rates for the rooms this year, which is pretty cool. So things are gearing up for the workshop, and it's going to be a great study. Very much looking forward to that. We just last week officially chose the color of this year's book, which we will share very soon. So that's pretty cool. So we have that going on. Plus some other big news that we are fixing to really begin putting out is that the new Grow and Glorify magazine that is put on by Excel Still More Inc. Is now officially going to be moving to print. So we have the digital magazine that is of course out. But we are fixing to open up subscriptions for the new printed magazine. And that new printed magazine will officially, as long as everything works out and we get the subscriptions that we need, the first print will be September. So really exciting stuff. We've got an excellent group of ladies, a great team working on that. I just got the July issue in yesterday. And so going through that before we put it out. So a lot of cool stuff happening at Excel Still More. New podcast coming out soon that we'll add to the network, and just a lot of cool stuff, man. So that's what's been going on with us, and why we have took off last week, because we were nose to the grindstone, trying to get it all done and in. But it's in, and so really happy about that. I'm really excited about this coming workshop. It's going to be really good. So January 27th through 30th at the Okana Resort in Oklahoma City, studying the book of Ephesians. And we've got a great lineup of speakers. We'll be putting out stuff on that very, very soon. So be sure to mark down on your calendars and come join us for a great study together.
Yep.
Well, Corey, without further ado, man, let's get into our study. If we're going to tackle two different subjects that Jesus is talking about, we should probably go ahead and get into this. We're in Matthew chapter 6, and we're going to be looking at trying to cover verse 16, kind of down through verse 27 or so, probably just through the end of the chapter. But that's what we're covering today. And just to kind of get everyone caught up, as a reminder of the things that we have looked at, we started out looking at the Beatitudes, and then we looked at salt and light. We looked at Jesus' view of Scripture, and of course the thesis of the sermon, which is found in Matthew 5 and verse 20. We tackled several different subjects in discussion of righteousness, anger and lust, divorce and vows, revenge and love. And then we have, of course, been looking at the different areas of righteousness over the past few weeks and looking at alms. And last episode, we looked at prayer. And now we're looking at fasting and money, or you may have materialism, whichever you want to call it. And so that's kind of where we are starting off in this episode. So we've got a lot to talk about, a lot to study. So, Corey, let's dig into this thing, man. Where do we want to start as we get into our study of fasting here in Matthew chapter 6 and verse 16?
Well, you want to just read the 3 verses there that are about that, and we can go from there, I guess.
Let's do that. Yep. Okay. Whenever you fast, do not put on a gloomy face as the hypocrites do, for they neglect their appearance so that they will be noticed by men when they're fasting. Truly, I say to you, they have their reward in full. But you, when you fast, anoint your head and wash your face, so that your fasting will not be noticed by men, but by your Father who is in secret, and your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you.
So it's kind of cool. We've mentioned this in a couple of the others. I've tried to make the point that he starts out by saying when you fast. Just like he has some of these other things, there's almost an expectation or an assumption that Jesus has of his followers that they're going to fast. And I know that, there's nowhere in the New Testament that we're commanded to fast. Really and truly, there's only one day that in the Old Testament they were required to fast. But there was a lot more fasting that went along with that. And it's interesting to notice when you go through the New Testament how often when you see fasting mentioned, like in Acts 15 and Acts 20 and 1 Corinthians 7, lots of places where fasting is mentioned, it's connected to prayer. And it's almost like not only do you have more time freed up because you're fasting, but I've always viewed it as, every time my stomach growls, then that's like the alarm clock going off reminding me, all right, let's spend a little time in prayer about whatever it is that I'm working on or concerned about or whatever it is. But again, there seems to be this expectation that followers of Jesus were going to fast. And so like everything else in this chapter, we keep pointing out chapter 6 and verse 1 is the kind of the umbrella over which all of these different areas of righteousness sit, that you need to beware of doing your righteousness before men to be seen by them, because if you do that, you don't have any reward from your Father in heaven. So when you fast, there's an expectation that probably it's going to happen, and we don't like talking about it. This is the unspoken idea of the New Testament. Maybe gluttony is the second most unapproached idea in the New Testament, and they kind of go hand in hand. But anyway, but when you do, same kind of thing. Don't do it in such a way that you're just trying to draw attention to yourself so that people will say, look how righteous he is, the way he fasts or whatever. Do it in such a way that it's about your relationship with the Lord.
Mm-hmm. So still building off of that thesis statement, unless your righteousness exceeds the righteousness of the scribes and Pharisees and so on. And then as you pointed out there in chapter 6 and verse 1, that is the umbrella, beware of practicing your righteousness to be noticed by, other people or noticed by men. Really that's setting the stage. Let me ask you this, Corey, because and I know that you've heard this, I've heard this. There's always a lot of conversation about it. Sometimes it's utilized in this way. There's certainly an applicable idea to this. But is fasting something, is this idea discussed, or could it be discussed for anything? Or does it only apply to one thing? Does that make sense? Like we'll have people say, well, we're going to fast from social media. We're going to fast from, binge watching shows or whatever it might be, just as a couple of examples. Is that really what fasting is, or is fasting geared towards something different?
Well, obviously in the New Testament and the Old Testament, in the Bible, we're talking about fasting from eating, from food. I do think, and we should probably point out that before you fast, there's certain medical conditions. If you're diabetic or some of those kinds of things, you probably should talk with your doctor and whatever before you ever attempt that. First and foremost, we ought to clarify that. But there's some people that just can't fast from food because of certain conditions, and I guess it would depend on how what's the word I'm looking for? How connected or addicted maybe that you are. There's very few things. Maybe breathing and drinking water is the only other two things that are, we have a real strong desire just innately, physically to eat, Now we talk about being hungry sometimes. Sometimes my son's favorite word has always been famished. They eat lunch, they work for 3 hours, they come in and they say, oh, I'm famished. Well, no, you're not famished. You're not even really hungry. Your stomach is just empty, whatever. But I think to a certain extent, maybe depending on how connected that you are to certain things, like some people say, well, I'm going to give up golf. Well, I don't play golf very often. And if I don't play golf, it's not a big deal for me. So I haven't really done anything by giving up golf. Now, if you told me, we're in, say, September, and you tell me, Corey, you can't watch any college football or any, that might hurt a little bit because, it's so much of my world. But there's still going to be a little bit difference than what you're doing with food, I think. But kind of the same principle. Again, it kind of depends on what, are you trying to take an easy way out just so you can say I fasted from something, or are you really, hey, this is something that I know is a major deal in my life, and I'm not, because there's physical benefits of fasting, obviously, and we could talk about that, but the main thing, for me at least, the spiritual benefits, again, if there's something going on, someone I love is going to have surgery on Thursday, and I'm going to fast from now to Thursday. Again, every time my stomach growls, I'm reminded to pray. If it's something like I just want to do a spiritual fast because I'm wanting to it's a discipline, I'll be honest with you, as much as I like to eat, which is apparent by looking at me, and if it's not apparent by looking at me, it's apparent by how much we talk about food in this podcast. But for me, like if I can go 7 days or whatever without food, then it's suddenly the temptations that Satan tries to throw at me, it becomes a whole lot easier to say, that's not going to bother me. It gives me confidence over my body and the temptations that I have. James 1, that my lusts is my problem, not temptation. It's my own lust. God doesn't do it to me. The devil doesn't do it. It's my lust. And so to have that kind of discipline to build the confidence against temptation and strengthen my relationship with God, is really where, and you can't get that if it's something that you're not, and at the end of this, he talks about your Father is going to reward you. Well, maybe that reward is confidence or it is a closer relationship or whatever, but if I'm not really giving something up, that really matters. Does that, I don't know, maybe it's a long way around of answering your question, and maybe I didn't even really answer the question, but that's, if you think about what the goal is, I think it helps answer that question of, am I really fasting when I give up X,
Right.
Y, or Z?
Right. And it seems throughout the text that true fasting really only has to do with food. To stop doing something, if you have your own reasons for doing that, that's great. But within the text, fasting really does have to do with food. And of course, that goes all the way back to the law of Moses on the Day of Atonement, Leviticus 16, Numbers 28, 29 in there. And so that really was the purpose for that fast. And like you said, it had a very spiritual understanding to it. It wasn't just done for any reason. Now, today we have, people for diet reasons, like you said, will do intermittent fasting and different things. And there are some physical benefits to that. And so, that's if that works for you, then that's great. But whenever we talk about, this biblical fasting, it really, like you said, needs to be for spiritual reasons. And as Jesus is talking, that spiritual reason has nothing to do with anyone else. It has to do with your relationship with God and His relationship with you. And so, in order to not be seen, by others, like you're parading it around, take care of yourself. This isn't, fasting doesn't mean that you need to walk around looking like you haven't,
woe is me.
Woe is me. Oh my goodness. And every time you sit down, you want everybody to know, oh, I haven't eaten in so many days. That's not what Jesus is getting at here. You fast. It's a personal thing. We're not getting on Facebook and saying, oh, I have been fasting for X amount of days, and oh, I feel so much more closer to God. Well, maybe that's true, but why are you telling everybody? So again, this is about that individual relationship with God. It's not about self-righteousness. It's not about self-promotion. Everything that Jesus has been promoting here has to do with our ability to grow in our relationship with God and do it in a very personal way and be able to be effective within ministry as we move forward in that. So I agree with you. I think the reward of fasting is the growth in that relationship. There's a lot of benefits out of that. And if you've ever spent any real time in a lot of prayer, maybe you didn't fast, but you spent a lot of time in prayer day after day. This has been a major thing. I've never experienced a time where I don't feel like I haven't grown. I may still feel terrible about what's going on, but I have a great sense of comfort and confidence because of what I have been doing in that relationship. I've been exercising my ability in that relationship with God to lay all this on Him. And I don't know how to explain it, but you just feel more confident. And I think that you read that all throughout the Psalms, throughout all of the different problems. Psalm 25, I preached through that this past Sunday afternoon. And I'm not sure exactly what's going on in David's life, but he's in danger from enemies. There's a lot of turmoil around him, and that psalm is made up basically of two different prayers and two different times. Even in his struggle, his anxiety, his worry, he says, "Wait for the Lord." And that's the kind of thing that you're able to get by taking that time and experiencing it with God. Again, as Peter said, casting all of your anxiety on him because he cares for you. So there's a great benefit into this. And when you add fasting onto it, this is a very spiritual time for us to be able to take part in. Is it commanded? No. Is it a good practice? I think it might be. And probably something that we should practice more than we do, preach on more than we probably do, because of the great benefits that are there.
Yeah, but again, it's all about why you're doing. They would in Jesus's day, they would say, "I'm going to do a 40." Now you think about back to Matthew 4, Jesus fasted 40 days and 40 nights, and it's interesting. I don't remember what verse that is. I could look and see, but he fasted 40 days and 40 nights and then became hungry. And You're like, wait a minute. How did that, let's say, where's it? Verse 2, after fasting 40 days and 40 nights, he was hungry. I would have been hungry way before 40 days and 40 nights. But like at 40 days and 40 nights of real fasting is when your body is going to start saying, all right, we need to start consuming ourselves. They didn't have, in that day and time, we talked about last week about your daily bread, they didn't have the body fat surplus that I do. But that's a long time. But they were in Jesus's day. Jesus is going 40 days and 40 nights, he points out, without food at all. In their day, a lot of them would say, I'm going to do a 40-day fast and or a 40-night fast or whatever. And they would eat all day long, and then after supper, they'd say, all right, I'm starting my fast. And then the next morning, they would break their fast, which is how we get breakfast, that word from. They'd break their fast and eat all day, and then they'd say, well, I fasted for 40 days. Well, did you really fast? But it was all about drawing attention to themselves. Jesus is out by himself in the wilderness without anyone around. There's nothing, and that's the point that he's trying to make for us is you don't do this for drawing attention. You don't do this so that people say, look how righteous he is. It's about you and your, now again, if you're talking about, I'm doing intermittent fasting, I've lost 27 pounds, that's one thing for health reasons. Sure. But if you're doing it for spiritual reasons, then you're not going around flaunting. That's not what true righteousness is all about.
Right. Right. And something that I think that's good to point out, and we've talked about this, I'm pretty sure, before, on the idea of especially with prayer, but it's the what happens after that 40 days and 40 nights of his fasting that kind of, I think, shows you the reason. He's about to enter into his ministry. Specifically, he's about to choose 12 men who are going to be a part of this group that he's going to send out into the world to turn it upside down. We would know them as the apostles. And so as Jesus is beginning this process, he goes and he fasts. And the amount of time that he fasts, I think, is pretty significant because of it was a really big decision. It was a really big movement, a really big moment that he was going, that he was about to embark on. Now, I'm not saying that the time of your fasting needs to be dictated by the, how big whatever it is that you're doing is. I don't know that there's any correlation there, but again, there's a number of things going on during this time. Mark says that he was being tempted and tried the whole time by Satan himself. So there's a lot going on there, but when big decisions happen, we usually see Jesus doing one of two things, if not both. He's fasting and he's praying. And maybe he's doing both of them. Maybe he's doing one of them, and not fasting but praying. Because if you're fasting, you are praying. So, but anytime there's something big happening, that's what he's going off to do, is to go spend time with God. And I think that is the point, is spending that time, that quality time, focusing on whatever it is or, reason that you're fasting for. And this major spiritual, emphasis is placed on that. So something I think that is really neat to notice about Jesus' time in the wilderness.
Well, like I said a while ago, you see it in the New Testament connected with praying. What was the section right before this was praying. This section, we're going to go money and then worry, kind of in that same line. But then you also see Jesus, again, fasting's not mentioned a lot. In fact, the book of Acts is the last time that it's mentioned in the New Testament. But like in chapter 13, when the church at Antioch is deciding who they're going to send out as missionaries, what do? They fast and pray. And then we don't know how long, to your point about the length of time. It just says they fasted. And after fasting and praying, they said, let's separate Barnabas and Paul. And so very similar to what you see Jesus doing in Matthew chapter 4. You're fasting and while you're making this decision. And it is interesting, if you ever do practice this discipline, how clear your mind works, how better. I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. If you've never fasted before, first 2 to 3 days are bad. Rough. I mean, for me, it's bad. That's all I can think about is food,
Yeah.
But it's almost like on the third day, somewhere, maybe the fourth day, your body says, oh, this is the new reality. And it just doesn't bother you. Now, drink a lot of water. That'll help fill your stomach up, that kind of thing. But, it's like from that point on, for however long you fast, you think clearer, you sleep better. Mm-hmm. Your body kind of detoxes itself, and there's some, those would be health reasons, but at the same time, you can also see why rest and clearer thinking helps you spiritually as well.
Yeah. Yeah. It really is a very good sleep. For sure. You mentioned that, and that was something that I noticed is, you really do sleep well, because your body's not working to process anything. It can just, lay quiet really. And, so, there are a lot of benefits to it. And of course that's not really what we're not trying to promote this. If you do it, you do it. But there are a number of things that are good about fasting. But whenever you do fast, it needs to be done in the right way. And just like everything else. So a huge point of
I'm not
emphasis.
saying you have to do it.
Yeah.
But I am saying that it's something you ought to try, maybe. If you decide not to, it doesn't make someone who does fast more righteous than you.
Right.
We're not trying to do like the Pharisees and build laws where God hasn't, but we're just saying there's enough said about it in the New Testament, and particularly by Jesus, to help us see that it might be something that we ought to think about and talk about a little bit more than we do sometimes.
Yeah, and I know just because of conversations, a number of people that I did not realize actively practice this. And, nobody would know that they are. And the only reason that I know that they do, again, is because we've talked about it. And so a lot of people do practice this. And like you said, it doesn't mean anything. But, as far as they're better than you or not, but
I would also say, much like prayer, I'm not saying that it's altogether bad to let it be known. Again, depending on what your motives are. Like there's a guy that up in Paris, Tennessee, when I preached up there, had never heard anybody preach about fasting until I did. And then he's like, so I'm going to try it. And he did. And to this day, like every now and again, he'll send me a text and he'll say, hey, I've got this going on and I'm going to fast for the next 3 days and pray about it. You want to fast with me? And we do. And we check in with each other while we do. I've had occasions where church leadership has said, hey, we're not telling the whole congregation, but this is going on. We're going to fast and pray about this, and we do. And it's one of those things we're not doing it. We're not telling each other we're fasting for show. We're not telling we're fasting to require it of each other.
Yeah.
But there is, it goes back like prayer. It goes back to what is your motivation in your heart. And the Lord knows that. If you're only doing it so others say, hey, look at how righteous he is, that's all the reward you're going to get. But if it's to grow closer to the Lord, he's going to reward that.
Right. So, hopefully, you who are listening to this or, might consider if you haven't done it before. You don't have to do it for a long time. If you have something coming up or you're just wanting to, explore this from a spiritual perspective and spend some time in prayer, a lot of things going on. Maybe there's not a lot of things going on, but you can always find something to pray about. And if there's, maybe this is a quiet time in your life, that's great. There's always a lot to pray about with you. And so fasting can be as much about your spiritual walk as it can be about some big thing that's going on. And so, again, there's no command to do this, but it is something that was practiced. And I feel that it's a good thing to practice. And if you choose to do that, go for it and take a few days and try it out and really focus on it and see what happens and, go from there. So,
and if you can, try to make it to that fourth day at least.
Try.
Because you'll see that.
That's when things change. After that third day, it really does. It's weird how it changes. But
make sure there's no homemade ice cream around to tempt you.
No. So if you're going to give us your favorite homemade, do it before. Go and get you some, and then make it, eat it, and then. We probably have done this in the complete wrong way, Corey.
That's par for the course.
We really don't think about much when we do this. We're like, well, here's the topic. Let's get. There is some planning, but not everything's planned. So that's where we are. Yeah. That's us. We're untied.
That's
and
right.
We just roll with the punches. Well, I think that unless we have something else, we can kind of roll into our next to the next topic that Jesus begins to discuss, and of course, that is money or materialism or whatever you want to call it. So that starts here in verse 19. So.
Yeah, and we didn't point out, obviously, in verse 16, our key word for this section is not. Do not put on a gloomy face. Well, you see that again here in verse 19. Do not store up for yourself treasures on earth. So here, a fourth area of righteousness, and we're going to talk about money or material possessions or whatever.
Yeah, and I know that we have done this, but you can see we've highlighted all these. Verse 2, verse 3, verse 5, verse 8, verse 13, verse 15, 16, and now 19. We've got it again in 25, 31, and 34. So this really is a thread that's going all throughout this section. So I'll read 19 through 24, and then we can get into this. Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy, and where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys, and where thieves do not break in and steal. I missed that one. I got to put that on there. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. The eye is the lamp of the body, so then your eye is clear, your whole body is to be full of light. But if your eye is bad, your whole body will be full of darkness. If then the light that is in you is darkness, how great is the darkness? No one can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and wealth. Or maybe you have mammon there. So I'm going to go ahead and mark this next do not that I missed here, so we keeping track of all these. So a lot to unpack with this, Corey.
Well, his first point is that we're going to lay up treasure somewhere.
Yeah.
Okay. We got only two options: either on earth, where you're going to have the problems of moths, rust, and thieves, or in heaven, where you don't have moths, rust, and thieves. So we think about your account is FDIC insured. Your heavenly bank account is a protected account that nothing can get to. See? And the importance of that of where you're laying up your treasure is seen in verse 21, that's where your heart is. Wherever your treasure is located, that's where your heart is going to be. So, we preaching and teaching, we always point out the fact that if you can say anything is where your heart or your desire or your priority is, but I don't know if people actually do fill out your checkbook register anymore. I'm showing my age, I guess, Garrett, but look at your bank statement or whatever. That's a pretty good indication of where your heart is, because your heart is tied to that treasure, not because the preacher said so, but because Jesus said so. And Jesus says that your heart can only be in one of two places. It's either your heart is in there's a song that a bluegrass song, "I'll leave my heart in Tennessee. When I die, they can bury me, but I'll leave my heart in Tennessee." Well, where is your heart really? It's only one of two places. It's on this earth or it's in heaven, and it would be foolish to put it in harm's way because you're exposing it to lost.
Yeah. Now, what's interesting about the moths and rust, and I know for a long time I was like, what is this? What is this talking about? Well, they didn't have dollars like we have today. So the money was different. Things were different. So these are two things that really, like you said, was a big deal. It was a major impact on somebody's life. It is today as well. But this is something that they were really worried about: wealth and clothing. So clothes would be destroyed pretty easily by moths. And of course, if you're maybe in a certain part of the world, and that's a deal, and you have moths, they'll eat holes in your clothes and all kinds of stuff. And so that's a reality that we understand. Well, that was a very harsh reality back then. Well, money, on the other hand, would rust because it wasn't a paper dollar like we have. It was something that was very different. So that's how those two things correlate. So their houses were made differently. They were made of mud. Their money was made of different material. Their clothes weren't nicely packed in a closet like ours are. And so, there's a lot of difference. There's a lot of cultural difference that they were dealing with that maybe we don't. So that's kind of how all that fits in really what it's meaning. And like you said, something is going to run our life. Something is going to sit on our heart. And I automatically connect Colossians chapter 3, verse 15 through 17 from a New Testament perspective. Let the peace of Christ rule in your heart. Let the word of Christ richly dwell within you, all that. So those are really important things to think about. You will connect your heart to what you truly treasure. And like you said, so.
Yeah, and you think about, how do I make those deposits? Well, think about what we've talked about in this chapter alone. When I'm giving my alms and nobody sees, I'm laying up treasures in heaven. When I'm praying in an appropriate way, I'm laying up treasures in heaven. When I'm fasting in an appropriate way, I'm laying up treasures in heaven. When I'm seeking first His kingdom, I'm laying up treasures in heaven. When I'm not worrying, I'm focused on spiritual things, that physical thing, I'm laying up treasures in heaven. Mm-hmm. So again, just in the context here, you can see, if I'm doing it for the back to verse 1 again, if I'm doing it for the praise of men, I've got my reward. But if I'm doing it not for that reason, but for righteousness' sake, then I'm not getting the reward now necessarily, but I'm laying up my treasures in heaven. I'm depositing into that account, and I'll get to reap that benefit one day.
Mm-hmm. And it's going to be a great benefit. That's for sure.
Yes. Yeah.
It will be great. So it kind of transitions here a little bit, talking about treasure, and then he starts talking about the lamp of the body and the eye and on the darkness and all of that. So how does all this transition as far as the treasures and money and everything else?
Well, it is one of those things where most commentators say it doesn't make sense, and you'll hear people preach these two verses, 22 and 23, talking about pornography and lusting and everything else. But here's, Garrett, an exegetical point to be made. If you look back up and say, all right, verse 19, what's he talking about in one word?
Treasures.
All right, verse 20, what's he talking about?
Treasures.
Verse 21, what's he talking about?
He's talking about, treasure or heart. Yeah.
Treasure. Verse 24, what's he talking about?
Well, he's talking about, he's going
one
to
word.
The body. Yeah.
Money, mammon, is so if he's talking about treasure in verse 19, verse 20, verse 21, verse 24, guess what he's talking about in 22 and 23?
Money.
He's talking about treasure. And so the idea here is that if your eye is on money, you've got bad spiritual vision because your priorities are wrong. So that puts you in darkness or evil, ignorance. You don't have any clue what you're doing to yourself or to others, or where your heart really ought to be. Paul says that the love of money pierces you through with many griefs. If your eye is not on money, then you got the right priorities and you got the right perspective of life. So you're in the light. You've got wisdom and purity and righteousness.
Just doing a little marking here.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. So we've got treasure and heart are being linked here, and then we have the eye of the body and that treasure that's being linked here. So I think, would it be fair to say that this is about we've said this before, but we're talking about the focus of your life. As a whole. Is really
don't think of your literal eyeball.
Yeah.
Don't think about your literal heart either. It's what's important to you. It's where you're looking. Like you've seen before, I know when y'all played Tennessee, you saw lots of Tennessee wide receivers do this, where the ball is thrown right to them and it hits them in the hand, and you say, how did they not catch that ball? And then the slow-mo replay, where's their eyes? It's not looking at the ball. They took their eye off the ball and they didn't catch it, right? Well, that's what we do. We take our eye off the goal and we start focusing on all this stuff around us, and then we miss out on what really is the point of all of this.
So there seems to be this contrast then, and I think we find this contrast in a lot of places. The light versus the dark.
Yes.
So the idea of light in this context seems to be discussing things that are made clear. And Jesus is going to, he's pushing the idea of kingdom and righteousness and in its right context. He's discussing the idea of doing the Lord's work, being the light and the salt of the earth. He's discussing the idea of being selfless, not selfish. And so when there is light in the eye, there's a clear vision of what is right and what is not. But whenever you have the idea of darkness, when the eye is filled with darkness or the body is filled with darkness, then you have something else that's going on. You're being ruled by the things that don't matter, and your sin, darkness is almost in a lot of cases just another word to discuss the sin in your life. Darkness is sin. And sin is basically, ignorance or lawlessness, or there's a lot of different words that we could, use for that. But this is kind of what Jesus seems to be talking about. We should be seeing things the way that they should be seen, meaning we should be seeing things the way that God intends them to be seen. But rather from our own worldview, we begin to consider things as worth more than they are, more important than they are, and money or wealth or mammon, whichever translation you have, may have any one of those. That seems to be filling your heart, filling your mind with something that it shouldn't be, because that wealth, that money, that mammon, those riches, those treasures become they become your God if you're not careful. And so that is a sinful, darkened way to view these things within your life, and it gives you a completely different attitude than you should have, and you're falling in line with the ungodly, and you're walking down a path that you shouldn't do. So there's probably a lot of things that we could consider with that, as far as how it's made, who actually earned it, who gave it, but we probably, our mindsets probably fill a whole conglomerate of things whenever you consider those. But the light and the dark seems to be a huge contrast here.
To your point, and here's maybe a sermon seed for people to think about this choice or dichotomy that Jesus is pointing out here. You go back up to verses 19 and 20, and it's heaven or earth, right? Then verse 22 and 23, it's darkness or light. And then to transition to the last verse in this section, verse 24, it's God or mammon, God or wealth, God or treasure. Now, we would think the opposite side of God would be Satan, right? Mm-hmm. But no, it's money. So in all of these, it's what is your perspective? What is your perspective? Is it an earthly perspective or a heavenly perspective? Is it a perspective of light or is it a perspective of dark? Is it a perspective that's focused on God, or is it the perspective being focused on physical things? Does that make sense?
Yeah. I was looking for this other one here, and I had it colored in a different way.
And he's going to, while you're doing that, chapter 7, the conclusion of the Sermon on the Mount, he's really going to show you it's one way or the other. There's not a middle ground. You're either following God or you're not following God. That's as simple as it is, but we see a little bit of a taste of that here in this particular section of righteousness.
Yeah, this really does kind of clarify or bring together this idea of serving two masters. And he mentions them in three different ways, like you said: earth, heaven, light, darkness, God, wealth. And that's the truth. I mean, just from a practical standpoint, it is an impossible thing to do, because your desire, your passion, wherever that lies, that's what you're going after. It's not split. It's going one direction. And man, Jesus says it in such a practical way that it really is hard to miss that once you lay it out. I'm glad that you pointed this out. And I would encourage everybody to mark these contrasts within your Bibles, because that really does give definition to what he's actually saying about serving two masters and what they actually are. And of course, darkness, these treasure, the wealth, earth, there definitely is a strong correlation to the work that Satan is doing in our life, and the deception that he's offering to our hearts and minds. But certainly this contrast is really out front in the open, and something that we need to consider.
Mm-hmm. So the old song, Am I froze up? No, I'm not.
Nope, you're good.
The old song, yeah, who do you love? It's one way or the other. You can't, no middle ground here. You got to make up your decision, make up your mind.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know if we want to, I think that we'll leave this worry and anxiety, that 25 and following. It certainly does, this whole thought just continues on. And I think directly plays into some of the things that he has just talked about. And, but we can certainly
for this
save
reason.
that for, So we'll save that for next episode. But this is where is your heart? Who rules your heart? Who is sitting on the throne of your heart? What matters to you? What do you treasure in this life? That will directly dictate your actions, your everything. And that's a big deal. That's a very important thing to consider as we go through.
It's almost like the creator of the cosmos actually put structure in his sermon. Who would have thought that?
No, these are all just random thoughts, Corey. Random.
Yeah, random thoughts with Jesus of Nazareth.
Hard to stay on topic.
Yeah.
Oh wait, he is.
I'm not sure how it all fits in together, Jesus.
Yeah. Well, it does.
Yeah.
It does. It does very well, man. Yeah, this is the Sermon on the Mount is just really, really impressive. I don't know another word to use for it. It is impressive because of how deep the teaching is, but how practical the teaching is and how applicable the teaching is. So,
which is a reminder for us is, go ahead. You're fixing to say it. Go ahead.
For all of us preachers and teachers out there, whether you're doing this full time or you're just teaching on Sundays or Wednesday, whatever you're doing, we have got to mimic this, just this practical way of easy learning. We love to complicate things and try to sound smarter than we are. I've tried to do it. I'm sure you've tried to do it. We've all tried to do it. But at a basic level, everybody's pretty simple-minded. And the idea here throughout all of the text, I just published an article and actually did a podcast on this that came out yesterday. Can I Understand the Bible? The entire purpose of everything that was written down in the Word of the Lord was so that we could understand it. It was not so that we could not understand it. And if we are going to understand it as simple-minded people, then God had to give us this information in the simplest of forms so that we could understand what the will of the Lord is. And Jesus does a masterful job of that. Of course, he's the master teacher, so that makes perfect sense. Well, we've had a little bit of technical difficulty with Corey, who every now and then...
This may be the Lord of the computer's way of telling me it's time to end. I don't know.
You can hear his fast speech.
Well, I was going to say, though, before I get off here, not only that as preachers, but also, on the other hand, don't be scared to actually have some depth there. We sometimes shy away and want to do surface level kind of cotton candy sermons. Jesus doesn't do that. He's not pulling any punches with any of this. Mm-hmm. So preach the word, but do it in a way that connects with people and is applicable to people.
Yeah. And there's a way that you can be deep without being a commentary.
That's right.
And so I think part of our job as preachers and teachers, evangelists, is to take everything, pull it together, and be able to share it in a simple way while exploring the depth of the text in a way that everybody can, that it can sink in and that we can soak up. And sometimes that's a little bit challenging. It really is. Sometimes that just is what it is. It can be challenging, but it can be done. It has been done for a long time. And Jesus is exploring a lot of very, very in-depth things and making it easy for us to understand. And so I think that's a great example for us to consider for our life.
Yep. All right, Percy, get me out of here.
All right. Well, we will come back to you in probably 2 weeks from when this episode airs, because I will be in Louisville at Preacher Training Camp. Looking forward to a great week together with all those guys down there. We got 36 that will be with us, and so it's going to be really good. So in a couple of weeks, we will be coming back to you and discussing the idea of worry or anxiety, and we'll be following the text there throughout the rest of chapter 6. So as always, we're grateful that you have joined us today for another episode of the Untied Podcast. We hope that the Lord is continuing to bless your life and all that you do, and that you are striving to grow in your daily walk with Him. And so thank you for joining us today. We hope that you'll like, share, follow, and subscribe to this podcast and all the other podcasts on the ExcelPod Network. Help this network and all the podcasts to grow. Share it with your friends if you enjoy this. We hope that you're growing from it, and thank you for being here with us. So until next time, we hope that you will stay untied.
Yeah, who do you love?